Accidentally taking more than a 10 strip of LSD. A trip report by the user CRIT, posted to the psychonaut subreddit 5 years ago. Prologue. I'd received some gel tabs for really cheap, because the gel itself had melted away, and my plug couldn't sell them because he didn't know the dosage, so he just ended up selling it all to me. I'd gone to a rave about a week before and took 2 little slivers of the dose. I knew the tabs were originally 200 micrograms each, and I wanted to start low and feel it out, in addition to 2 points of M, after testing both of course. And to be honest, the effects were a bit underwhelming. This made me conclude that the dose had been weakened due to being exposed to enough heat for it to melt. The night of the trip. I recall it being a relatively normal night. I was just playing video games and chilling, and I remembered the gel I had in my freezer. I decided that tonight, I would like to trip a little harder. I assumed that since I had underwhelming effects at the rave, that the acid was weak, so I thought I should take all of what I have left. And this is where I messed it up. I placed the chunk under my tongue and took a deep breath, excited for the journey to come. About 30 minutes later, I knew something was off. I began feeling overwhelmingly nauseous and hot, and the body load felt like gravity was being increased by increments of 50% every 5 minutes. When it hadn't even been half an hour, and I saw an incredibly intricate pattern on my wall, I knew I'd fucked up. I started stripping myself naked, literally becoming the naked guy on a lot of acid. I was completely overheating and trying to keep it together as this brutal come-up continued. I'd taken a 0.5 gram dab on a 10 strip before, so I was no stranger to deep acid trips. But when you're not prepared for it, it can be a little difficult to handle. I sat there dry heaving over an empty popcorn bowl and downing water. My heart was pounding so hard that I could actually feel it in my face, feeling the intensity rise to completely unfathomable levels. After the come-up had passed, I began to feel much better. I was completely blinded by the most intense visuals I have ever seen while still being in my body. In all honesty, I almost started to lose it a little bit. I was ready for like 500 micrograms max, but right now I was just getting absolutely dicked down by at least a 10 strip. I'd say even about 1500 micrograms. I proceeded to put on my "The Trip is Going Downhill and That Needs to Change" songs. Parabole plus Parabola back to back by Tool, laying on my back spread eagle, just absolutely enamoured by my closed eye visuals. The visuals themselves were so serious, seemingly sacred and transcendent. It's actually very, very hard to communicate the things I saw, but I remember at one point I saw an incredibly intricate, monolithic temple-like structure that had giant pillars with energy and hieroglyphs flowing through it. Shifting geometry completely engulfed everything I would look at. I would look at my phone or my lamp, and it would take like 10 seconds of me looking at it for me to be like, oh, that's a phone. My thoughts were slowed down, and the inner monologue in my head was making every word I would think sound like this, with a lot of pitch distortion and waviness. That was a weird effect for sure. Strangely, I didn't actually experience a full ego death, and I think that's because I wasn't going into the trip with that mindset. I never fought the trip during its whole duration. Ego death just didn't happen this time. I did, however, forget entirely that I had a body, or that I was me when I closed my eyes. So there was definitely some aspects of ego death going on, but it just wasn't like the other ego death experiences that I've had. It was like the second I closed them, I began to float away. I thought to myself, Hey, I know I'm peeking right now, but if I'm already this deep, I might as well see how deep the rabbit hole goes. I took 2 30mg edibles, 1 indica and 1 sativa, and I weigh 120 with not a large tolerance. This completely kicked everything into the highest, most ridiculous level I have ever experienced on LSD. I would look at a tapestry and I could literally replicate every precise detail in my vision after I looked away, and watch it dissolve into patterns. Everything I would look at stayed in my vision for at least 3 seconds. It was like having projection vision. I spent a lot of the trip just looking at things and then looking away, watching what I was looking at being transferred into visuals in my vision, and then being eaten up by the geometry. The visuals themselves were almost on the level of DMT-like geometry. And good lord, the traces, man. It was like being able to paint in the air. I decided to time it on my phone, and my traces after waving my hand from one side of my vision to the other would last 7 seconds. That doesn't sound like a long time, but count to 7 while saying Mississippi in between each number, and imagine your traces lasting that long in complete clarity with little to no fading. It's crazy. I came to a few realizations during this trip. It brought the fact that I focused too much on the past and the future without being mindful of the present to light. The trip showed me that I need to focus on experiencing the moment and valuing even the mundane things in my life. I realised that I needed to spend more time with my family, as well as eat better, exercise more, and just generally live a more pure, wholesome life. While it was unplanned, and it was certainly fucking crazy, I'm very glad I held it together throughout the experience, and took some things away from it. I'd just like to thank you for reading, and to wish you safe travels. The Too Long Didn't Read edition. Thought the acid degraded from heat, so I took it all, and ended up blasting into the most intense trip I have ever experienced.